At this time, I would like to remind everyone, in order to ask a question, press star, then the number one on your telephone keypad. We'll pause for just a moment to compile the Q&A roster. Your first question comes from Ted Jackson with Northland.
Thanks. Hey, Thomas. Hey, John. How are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Great, thanks.
So I got, I don't know, 3 or 4 questions. The first one is the customer that has shifted its, I guess you would call it acceptance of, the initial Carno units from 25 into 26. I mean, not that big of a deal. Could you just talk maybe like what vertical is that customer in?
Yeah, so this is the Navy. And so as we highlighted on today's call, exciting news is that ship is now in the water, in the ocean, going through sea trials. And then we're scheduled to now be installed into the ship in 2026. And so that's why what we also wanted to highlight on today's call is it's not beneficial for us to build up those assets and then just have them sit waiting to actually be deployed into the ship. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take some of those and we're actually going to make them demonstration units that we're going to bring out to data centers, to some third-party validation sites, and actually utilize those assets to showcase the technology there, get more customer momentum growing, but then still be able to meet the demands of the Navy in getting those units into a ship in 26.
And then that ship, that's the unmanned ship that they're like. I mean, there's been a lot of press about the development of that ship, but that's what it is, correct? The kind of this, next generation sort of, crewless.
That's correct. And Josh and I and some of our team actually got a chance to go board the ship this past quarter, and it's unbelievably neat. It's really designed for weaponry on board and then fuel and engines to move the ship around. So very different than conventional Navy ships where you usually have to have sleeping quarters and a cafeteria and medical, all those things that personnel need. The ship has none of that. It's the hull of the ship. It's fuel storage. It's a handful of engine bays that we can deploy multiple megawatts of Carnos into. And then the deck of the ship is designed where they can mount different types of weapons on board. And the goal of the ship is it gets deployed, and then it will be out in the ocean for a long time prior to coming back to dock. And that's one of the key drivers why the Navy was so excited about our technology, is because if you think about like a diesel engine that a ship is normally powered by, that requires every few hundred hours you need to do an oil change. Well, if there's no one on board, there's no one to do that maintenance. And that's where our low maintenance design really matches what they needed out of an engine.
I've seen pictures of it. It's a pretty cool looking product or system.
We're excited.
Then the next question for me, going into kind of the testing and such, is on slide 3, I saw that you had a couple of Carno units sitting in the parking lot going through your testing phase. I mean, is that what I'm seeing there? Is that you have, when I came out and visited, you had 1 out there, now you have 2 out there. I mean, so that picture as itself is an indication of progress with regards to you getting systems and going through those initial runs for your end customers.
That's correct. So we've got a couple of customer assets in operation at the facility. We also have a couple of our own assets in operation at the facility. So you're absolutely correct. And that was one of the reasons why we put that photo in there, just to show that we are building these systems. We're getting them out there. As we highlighted on today's call, one of the next big phases here we're working on is getting that UL certification. So we're going through that testing now. And then once we have that, then that really enables us to start getting these assets out to customer sites.
When do you think you'll have all the UL testing completed?
Yeah, we're talking, in the next couple of months here, we'll have that completed. And as we highlighted on today's call, so there's a couple of different phases of UL, right? So for instance, the linear electric motor needs to be certified, the battery needs to be certified, and then the whole power module itself needs certification. So one of the big milestones we hit coming into today's call was we were able to achieve the certification around the linear electric motor. So we went through that testing. We got the approval there, which, as we shared, I mean, the big accomplishment where we actually passed it on the very first attempt of doing it, which, as our certifier said, he had never seen something pass on day one of testing, which was great to see.
Congrats on that. I have a few more. I'm going to ask one more, and then if I need to, I'll come back in line. And that is on the regen rebuild. You commented yourself, the initial systems, and this is not a surprise, don't have that component in it, that it's not required for your customers, and it's an easy swap out. Have you, at this point, taken that new component and started putting it in units and doing any testing with it? And, is that just for yourself, or are you doing that, and we'll go into some of the initial beta units?
Yeah, so both in our system, and then also it's now going into customer assets as well. So maybe just to step back, in past quarters, we saw performance deficiency with the regen, and we were working on depowdering and new architecture, new design of that part. Over the last quarter, we implemented that part into our own asset. We saw a step change in performance out of the system. So that was great to see, and that really highlighted, or brought forward what we shared on today's call, which is we've now gotten the performance to a point where we believe we're meeting the needs of the customer. So, for instance, all of our early units that are going out to customers only require up to about 150 kilowatts of power generation. We're now exceeding that. We're now north of 150 kilowatts. So our thought is, let's move forward. Let's go ahead with the design as is, get units out into the field. And then as we near commercialization, there are some small areas that we want to continue to improve. So we're seeing some heat leakage through the piston. We're seeing some heat leakage through the cylinder wall, a sleeve that goes in there. So minor changes like changing the material of that component. So we're going through some of those changes so that as we get into commercialization, or as we enter commercialization, we plan to be at the full 200 kilowatts of power output of the system.
Well, that's why you go through beta, isn't it, to find those things and correct them. So I will step out of line, and I might jump back in later. Thanks.
Great.
Your next question comes from Sean Milligan with Needham.
Hey, Thomas. Hey, John. Thank you for
the
time this morning.
Good morning.
Just a quick question on your pipeline. The 500 units that you have in LOI, you're going to be delivering some units next year to those customers. I'm curious about the timing you expect those customers to then test those units at their own operations, and sort of the conversion from LOI to purchase order, maybe what your expectations are in timing there.
Sure. So even before we get the first asset out into their operations, some of the quantity of units will move from LOI into a firm agreement. And then from there, it'll be how do we continue to work through that backlog of the additional units on the LOI, which I think to your question is, how long do they need to test it? Which we're hearing in the 6 to 9 months is kind of the rough time frame that customers want to run the asset, experience it, and then from there they believe they'll have the confidence in the performance to keep going forward. It varies between customers. Some customers are saying, let's do 1 unit right out of the gate. Others are saying, let's do multiple units right out of the gate. But overarching the message is there's a lot of demand in this product, and the demand is continuing to grow. Even tomorrow, we have another new data center customer coming in that we're having great discussions with. And so we're continuing to build that customer interest. And as we shared today, we foresee that we will have enough demand in this product for years ahead that will actually be supply constrained as opposed to demand constrained.
That's great. Yeah, and then the other question was around the 500 units in LOI. Can you give any context around how many customers that maybe represents, and then sort of the timing of those? I think those date back to even 2024, first half of this year, but maybe how your discussions have expanded, sort of in terms of numbers of different opportunities you're now seeing in your pipeline. Just trying to understand how the pipeline's progressing as you're kind of moving KARNO forward here.
Sure. So, just kind of rough numbers, I believe it's in the dozens of customers, not in the hundreds of customers that we signed LOIs with. We are in discussions with even more than that. Not all discussions go to an LOI. Some discussions go to, okay, great, we like the technology, we want to see it in operation at other people's sites before we move forward with making a commitment. So, with all that, how has the market landscape evolved? I would say initially we were seeing a lot of interest from the military, a lot of interest from EV charging. We've actually seen some sectors that have popped up that have become even larger than those. So the data center space, seeing a ton of interest there. Data centers are just power constrained, right? That's their number one issue when they go to build out a new data center. They talk to the utility. Usually the answer is there's not enough power available. And so the data centers have really shifted to moving to make your own electricity, on-site power generation, which that's exactly what our technology is. Even as we highlighted in today's call, NVIDIA has come out and expressed that they see the future of data centers in the years ahead here actually shifting to an 800-volt DC architecture, which that is the architecture of the KARNO. We produced 800-volt DC natively, so we think we can fit perfectly into that. And then we've also seen just a growing demand on the commercial facility side of things. So the driver there is really, can you produce your own electricity for cheaper than you could buy electricity from the grid? So I'd say data centers, commercial applications are growing, and then the work with the Navy we've been doing has been going really well to a point where they've actually pulled in other branches of the military that we're now starting to work with as well.
Okay. And then the last question is around sort of like manufacturing scale up. So if you go back to the first part of this year, you had the powdering issues, which you've addressed. And then also, I think you had some outsourced, you had outsourced product manufacturing, which you brought back in-house. And it sounds like the manufacturing side today, you're kind of honing in on design and feel comfortable with where you are. But I'm more curious about your ability to scale in the future. So, the confidence in coming to like a systematic manufacturing process, the ability to scale up printers, and then just anything you need to do in-house there. And I think you brought up magnets, but obviously like a lot of these award potential on the data center side specifically is very large. So just the ability to source materials. I just wanted to get your big picture thoughts there for Hyliion moving forward.
Sure. So I'll first start with the challenges we were facing. So we had outsourced production of the electric motor. We pulled that in-house, as you highlighted. And then we were having issues with the regen, the depowdering. We believe we've gotten our arms around that as well. So as we did this past quarter, we leaned in and said, yeah, manufacturing is going to become a big part of the story ahead. That's why we hired Daryl Preble to come in and lead operations for us. He's built out manufacturing facilities and distribution facilities for Cummins and Husky in the past. So this is not a unknown journey to him, which is great. And then as we look at the phase ahead here, I think one of the big areas of focus is going to be how do we continue to get more and more out of the additive manufacturing machines. So we've got about 30 machines installed so far. We've got in total about 36 roughly that we've ordered. So still a few more to be delivered here. And then from there, one of the focus areas is going to be keep getting more and more out of the machine. So we know that we're not operating them at their fastest parameters, at the greatest throughput. That takes some just work to get them to those faster throughputs. So that'll be our next phase. And then from there, we'll look to continue to expand the number of printers we have and buy more assets. And that'll be how we scale volume. So the reason that is really key to the story is we actually expect that we're going to slow down our capital expenditures. The goal right now is not just keep buying more machines. The goal is actually going to shift to let's keep getting more and more out of the existing machines we already have. And then as John highlighted, then there will be another phase where, okay, let's continue to expand manufacturing and buy more assets.
Great. Thank you so much for the time.
Your next question is from Ted Jackson with Northland.
Thanks. Hey, I wanted to circle back. You made a comment about, and honestly, I was taking notes. I missed what you'd said, but that you had a bit of delay in delivery or development because you decided to go forward with what was it, that 800 kilowatt? Is that what could you sort of could you go through that again with what you said in your prepared remarks?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we were putting together the UL system, we saw some areas of opportunity that we could improve, both high voltage, low voltage, and so we decided to do those changes prior to going through UL certification, because once you certify it, it's much more difficult to go make changes after that. You have to go back through another recertification process. So what we decided was, why don't we go ahead and roll those improvements, those changes in now and get those done, which has been done. They're in the, to go back to your reference of the photo of the parking lot, they're incorporated into that UL system that's out there. So we made those changes. Now, that did add some time to the schedule. And so that was just a strategic decision we made of, let's get those rolled in and go through the UL certification process with those, as opposed to have to do an alteration or change down the road.
Okay. And no, that's kind of the other question I had got asked. So thanks.
There are no further questions at this time. I will now turn the call back to Thomas Healy for any closing remarks.
Great. And we actually had a couple of questions come in that Greg will read off for us as well.
Excuse me. Thomas, can you share more about why you see Carno as a good fit with nuclear and what timeline you envision for developing a solution in that space?
So today's call is the first time we've really talked about nuclear, but the reason we wanted to is because it really highlights the versatility of the Carno system. So as we've shared in the past, I mean, the Carno is a heat-powered generator. And so if you look at nuclear, all nuclear does is it makes heat. And then conventionally, nuclear SMRs will use steam turbines to take that heat and convert it into electricity. And so we started engaging with an organization in the SMR space, in the nuclear space, who were looking at actually replacing that steam turbine with a Carno. And we're seeing that we should be able to produce electricity more efficiently than even a steam turbine can. And so why that's important is, we're seeing that there's a lot of interest and a lot of momentum in the nuclear space. It's not happening tomorrow. This is still a ways out as to when nuclear and SMR will be deployed. But we think it's important to get our name into that discussion now, because a lot of these companies are in the R&D development phase and could select us as their way to produce the electricity as opposed to using a steam turbine.
You mentioned on today's call that NVIDIA has highlighted a new electrical architecture for data centers. Can you elaborate on how this matches Hyliion's existing architecture?
So data centers today are a lower voltage architecture. They are DC power, but they're in the 58 volt DC architecture. And NVIDIA came out with a report, a white paper that said they see the future actually moving to 800 volt DC power. Reason being is that as computers become more powerful, they consume more electricity. And when you just start scaling up, you end up consuming a lot of capital and just even the cost of copper to move that electricity around. So if you move to a higher voltage architecture like this 800 volt that we're at, you can reduce how much copper you need. You can reduce some of the other components and make the whole data center architecture more efficient and less costly. And so that's where we were excited to see this, because it matches us perfectly. We make 800 volt DC power natively. So if that's where data centers head and they start adopting other technologies like the grid, 480 volt AC architecture, are going to require other components, other inverters or converters to move to that 800-volt DC versus we'd be able to couple without those components. So it just aligns well with our vision and structure of what the product outputs and where data centers are heading. So with that, I believe that concludes the questions that we had come in. So on a closing note, appreciate everyone joining today's call. As we highlighted, we're pleased with some of the key metrics we've hit on the performance side of things. We're seeing growing customer demand, and we're excited about not only being a solution for the near term here, but also some of these future opportunities we discussed as well. So with that, we'll talk again next quarter. But in the meantime, I do encourage listeners to follow us on our social media channels. Also, follow the press releases we release, as we'll be sharing more throughout the quarter on those channels. Thank you for listening.
This concludes today's conference.